Hey guys, welcome back to yet another Windows 95 video. I don't remember if this is the third or fourth tutorial video I've made for this, but the reason I'm making whatever one this is because frankly I have never been really particularly pleased with any of them but the very first one that I made when I was, like 10 or 11 or something. Here's the thing, I spent so much time messing with this stuff back when I was that young that I was confident. I knew what I was doing. I had practiced it so many times just doing my own thing that by the time I got around to making the video, there was basically no risk of me not knowing what was going on, except for me not understanding how CD drivers worked on Windows 95 and having a little hiccup with that. But the last one I did has actually gotten a lot of traction, and I've kind of been embarrassed about that the whole time because I'm not real proud of it. I didn't feel like I was well prepared, and I didn't feel like I explained myself very well throughout the whole thing. So, today I'm going to right that wrong. I've come into this much more prepared than I was in the last one, and I even have a new boot disk available. I made my own boot disk for the very first one I did, and now we have a new one. So, to begin with, today we're going to be using 86Box. To my knowledge, PCEM isn't exactly dead, but it's been on a very long development hiatus, and so I want to use something different. 86Box is much the same sort of effort, but it works quite a bit differently. It's subject to a lot of the same limitations, honestly, and your mileage may vary. I have a Ryzen 5 3600, and I struggle on most of the configuration options on this in terms of things just not running super well. So if you have anything more than, like, I don't know, 5 years old, you're probably going to have a bad time. But that's probably okay. You can turn the emulated stuff down and kind of get things sorted that way. Firstly, you'll obviously need 86Box installed, and I believe the 86Box Manager is a separate program. It at least used to be. I think it still is. And the 86Box is available for multiple platforms, but I have only ever used it on Windows, so my instructions are just for Windows. 86Box Manager itself, I think, is Windows exclusive. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, go ahead and open 86Box Manager. Come up here and click Add. And we're just going to call this Windows 95 tutorial for myself, because I'm pretty sure I don't have one named that. Yeah. And leave Start This Machine Now unchecked. Go ahead and check Configure This Virtual Machine Now, and click Add. And it will say Successfully Created. Hopefully it does. So obviously we can't run Windows 95 on an original PC, so we need to change this to a 486. Now, Windows 95 will run on a lot of different machines, including some all the way back to the 386, but what I'm going to tell you to do here is pick the 486 on socket 3, because I know this is pretty stable in this emulator and works on most people's computers. There are some weird issues with some other ones, especially just performance issues when you start trying to emulate newer CPUs. So, go ahead and pick socket 3. For machine, you're going to pick the ASUS machine on SAS 496. For CPU, this doesn't really matter much, but when you choose something like a Pentium Overdrive or something else that's faster than a regular 486, again, you're probably going to run into performance problems. So I would recommend choosing the AMD AM486 DX2 Enhanced at 120 megahertz, because I do believe that's the fastest chip this software emulates. For memory, 16 megabytes is probably fine for a machine this old. You can do 32 or 64. It's not going to hurt anything. You can't go above 512. That will cause problems. But 16 should be just fine. And this checkbox for dynamic recompiler, on some people's computers it helps, on others it doesn't. I really don't understand. You'll have to figure that out for yourself if you want to figure out which is better. Go and click Display on the left. You can't run Windows 95 on a CGA card. I am going to come down here all the way toward the bottom. Well, maybe not the very bottom. There it is. Okay. The top of the VLB section, we're going to choose the VLB SingLabs ET4000 W32P Revision D. Either one of these will work. I'm going to pick the Diamond Stealth card. And configure that. You'll see you got memory options. Video emulation is a little finicky on 86Box, but once you get it set up right, it tends to work okay for the long run. I pick the ET4000 because it's widely supported and because it seems to be emulated well. On input devices, don't forget to add a mouse. I like to choose standard PS2 mouse myself and click configure, and I do wheel, although Windows 95 doesn't really have native support for the wheel, so it doesn't matter too much. On the sound section, you don't have to have a sound card if you don't want to, but I like to have one, so I do Sound Blaster 16. Don't bother with the plug-and-play one. In real life, the plug-and-play cards are easier to set up, but the reality is when you're emulating it, it's easier for you to just know that these are your parameters. In fact, just leave them all the default, unless you're adding other hardware that might conflict. That's basically how every real-world Sound Blaster is set up by default, and that's probably where you should leave it. Network. You don't need network support, but if you do want network support, you can use PCAP and select your wired network adapter. It does have to be wired, and you do have to install, I think it's libpcap or something like that on your Windows machine. And when you do that, you go enable it on each interface. I forget how exactly that works, but when you do get it installed, I believe it's this checkbox. It might be checked by default. I don't really remember, but when you turn it on, then you should be able to use the adapter inside of 86Box. Adapter-wise, the 16-bit Nova NE2000 is very widely supported. It's slow. Just make sure that the address and IRQs don't conflict with anything else, and you'll be fine. Serial ports and parallel ports, nothing really important there. Hard drive controller, just pick internal controller. This motherboard we're emulating has a built-in controller and it's good enough. Don't need a SCSI controller. On hard disks, go ahead and click New Hard Disk. Make one as big as you want. I tend to like to do a 6 or 8 gig drive on Windows 95, usually 6 gigs. I don't know why, because you could run Windows 95 comfortably on a 1 gig drive, but that's just how I roll. So I'm going to do Win95 tutorial. By the way, 86Box supports VHDs now, and I actually prefer VHDs myself, so I'm going to pick dynamic size VHD and save that. That's a relatively recent addition, I believe, and it really maximizes compatibility with other software. You can choose a type in here if you want to stick with a smaller drive, but if you want something big, you'll have to choose custom large and just type in how big you want it to be. So I'm going to just do 6144. That's 6411. 6144. On speed, this is an interesting option. If you want it to feel authentic, you can choose one of these mid-90s options. For the sake of the video, I'm going to leave it at max speed, just because I don't want to artificially increase the amount of time this video takes to make. And there it sits. See, it says 0:0. That means it's the primary drive on the primary channel. Come over to floppies and CD-ROMs. We have 1.44 meg floppy drives. Pick the regular 1.44 meg drive, not any of these other weird things. The second drive, you can choose what you want for the second drive, but my boot disk image is a 1.44 meg drive, so the primary drive has to be that. For the CD-ROM drive, make an ATAPI CD-ROM drive. You can put it on its own channel if you want. For maximum compatibility, leave it slave on the primary channel. And again, if you want it to feel authentic, set it to 6 or 8 times or something like that. I just want this video to go quickly, so I'm going to select 72 times. Other removable media, I don't really know how to make this stuff work. It's cool that it's there, but this stuff, none of this is important on a machine as new as this is. So, now that we've configured our whole machine, just click OK, and there's our machine. Alright, so now we're going to turn on our machine for the first time. It's slightly a lie. I had a bit of a problem earlier, so I'll tell you, I went ahead and set my window scaling factor to 2 times and the filter method to nearest neighbor. That's mainly just for the purpose of the video. I wanted it to look nice and crisp on your display. You can set that however you want. It doesn't affect performance or anything. It just affects how it looks. So, as you can see, we're fully emulating a real computer here, so we've got to set the BIOS settings. So go ahead and hit delete to enter the BIOS setup, standard CMOS setup, and set your floppy drives to match what they actually are. The date you don't have to set because thankfully it syncs it from your host computer, because that would be annoying otherwise. Other than that, I would go to advanced, or actually it says BIOS features setup, and come down here to boot sequence and change it to A and then C. It's not something you really have to do, it's just something that I prefer to do. It will work fine during the setup process even if you don't change that. The rest of this I don't think we need to change. Once you've set those few things, just click Save and Exit Setup, press Y, hit Enter to restart. Okay, go ahead and mount the boot floppy. So we're going to use 9x boot normal. I've got the download links for both of these in the description, but the normal one uses Windows 98's version of DOS that supports large disks. The compatible one uses the original Windows 95 version of DOS, which doesn't support large disks. And that's really just, if you're wanting to run an early version of Windows 95, you can do that without having any problems. The one downside of this is you cannot make the floppy drive run any faster. I guess that might affect emulation somehow. Alright, so obviously, as this menu would imply, the first step is to prepare our hard disk, or partition our hard disk rather. Go ahead and select option 1 and hit enter. It'll tell you to create a primary DOS partition of an appropriate size and ensure it is made active, and press a key to continue. After which point it will launch fdisk and you can do it. Now this question is important. This is asking if you want to enable large disk support. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, how earlier versions of Windows 95 don't support it. The reason that I have two separate disk images is really just to avoid a problem in this step. So you can choose preemptively whether you want this to be enabled or not. For our purposes, because my disk is 6 gigs and therefore over 2 gigs, I'm going to select yes. Alright, so now choose option 1 and choose option 1 again so we can create our primary DOS partition. Go ahead and press yes, and that will make a 6 gig partition on our drive and tell us to restart the computer. Go ahead and hit Control-Alt-Delete and boot from our floppy once again. Now at this point you should insert the Windows CD. So I'm going to go CD image, and I'll have to find it somewhere in here. Hold on. There it is. That's the one I'm looking for. This is the one I recommend you get if you don't actually own a copy of Windows 95. It's OSR 2.5 OEM with Microsoft Plus. Now that the disk is in, go ahead and hit option 2 to prepare to install Windows. It will load the CD-ROM driver and a couple other device drivers at the low level to prepare to run Windows setup. It gives you some instructions here. It explains the differences between the two versions and explains the process of installing Windows. You can read all that if you want, but I'm making this video so you don't have to. Once you get down here, it will ask you yes, no, or reread the file. Go ahead and hit yes to begin. Now it's going to format the hard drive, or rather ask you if you're sure you want to format the hard drive. And obviously you want to press yes, because this is an empty hard drive. It also copies a couple necessary system files here, after which point it will ask you to press a key to continue. When you do so, it will detect what version of Windows is on your CD. It will ask you if you want to copy the whole CD. You usually don't need to do that. I would only do that if you're having some weird problem with your CD-ROM driver post-install, but for the most part, everything you could possibly need is going to be just in the Windows setup folder. So we're going to press no. And even with things running as fast as they can, since this is emulating a 486, this will still take just a minute or two. It's not too bad. Once it finishes copying, if you're using a version of the Windows 95 CD that contains Microsoft Plus, it will ask you if you want to copy that as well. You don't have to, but I'm going to say yes. Once that completes, it will ask you to press a key to continue, after which point it will notify you that you must restart your computer. So, this is the cool part of using this boot disk. It avoids all of the weird problems that can occur when you try to run the setup straight off the CD. So go ahead and eject your CD, eject your floppy, and hit reset. It's now going to boot from the hard drive and install Windows from the hard drive to the hard drive. Oh, scan disk. Can't live with it, can't live without it. Is that a Droga 1 quote? I don't even remember anymore. I didn't even realize I was quoting something until I got done saying it, so I really don't know. Now do note that because, again, we're emulating... What the crap? Oh, brother. Somehow my mouse got disabled, I think. What the heck? Sure enough. Did anything else get disabled? Oh, well, the hard drive controller got disabled. But the hard drive is working, so I guess that doesn't matter. I don't know what I did. I did something weird. Okay. Okay. We have a mouse now, so... there we go. Now I have a mouse. Oh, goodness, it's sensitive. Okay, let me turn my mouse DPI down. There we go. Now, of course, since we are emulating a 486, again, it's going to be a bit slow. So once the setup wizard starts, you know, it asks you normal things like where you want to install Windows. And then it will think for a little bit. The general rule of thumb in Windows setup is you can change things, but that doesn't mean you want to. For me, I like to do custom and install everything because some weird things can happen if you choose not. Like if you choose to install some things but not everything, and I don't know. I've just had weird problems that way, so I always do it this way. For product key, there is a product key on WinWorld PC, or you can just use mine that is in my brain because I've been installing Windows 95 for a decade now. For some reason, 222-95-0003594833350. Under user information, hit next. It's going to detect hardware. Go ahead and say yes. And this is the important thing. This is why we decided to boot from the hard drive instead of the floppy or CD for this. We need to be able to check CD-ROM driver. It will not install the 32-bit CD-ROM drivers. That is very important. That's why we're booting from the hard drive for this. Network adapter, check that if you enabled a network adapter. Don't check it if you didn't. Same thing with the sound card. I enabled all three things, so we're going to check them all. Go ahead and hit next, and this will take a little bit. Alright, now that it has detected our hardware, it's going to ask what components to install. This is why I chose custom, because I'm going to install everything just to avoid any weird problems. So you can uncheck each gray box and then recheck it. Skip over Microsoft Fax, I think because it requires Windows messaging, and then you can click on it. And now you've selected everything. All 206.2 megabytes of it. Go ahead and click next. And it's going to ask you a few questions. Now, Windows 95 by default lacks TCP/IP support. I think if you try to launch Internet Explorer, it will install that for you, but we might as well do it during setup here. So go ahead and click Add, Protocol, Add, Microsoft, TCP/IP, click OK, and we'll see that it has appeared down here. For network logon, it defaults to client from Microsoft Networks. This helps with file sharing and stuff. I generally like to choose Windows logon just because it makes the system boot a tiny bit faster, and we're not actually doing any sort of workgroup stuff. If you do want to do networking with your old computers and whatnot, then you probably need to choose a different option, but this is just what I like to do. And inside of here, I don't even know what these things do. I guess they give others access to your files and printers, but I've never messed with it, so just leave those alone. Next, it'll ask you some things. I'm not even going to bother changing those, it doesn't matter. It has detected our display driver, so that is good. It detected our keyboard and our mouse. The monitor, it has not detected, so I'm going to change this, and I'm just going to choose Super VGA 800 by 600. 1024 by 768 may also work. It just depends on what graphics cards you chose. And then click Next. Yeah, everything else is good. We don't need to create a startup disk. Why would we need one of those? Click Next again, and now it's going to actually start installing. What in tarnation? Ignore. Okay. Hopefully I didn't break anything. I've never seen that before. Always when I'm filming, man. Getting freaking access violations in the Windows setup. Oh, boy howdy. Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. You know, I've always liked how the Windows 95 setup wallpaper has like the worst keyboard ever made, basically. Okay. That's unfair. That is unfair to that keyboard because there are way worse keyboards. But like, have you ever known somebody who used one of these and actually liked using it, and they weren't like your boss in an office building or something? Like, it's a very specific kind of person who actually usually uses those kinds of keyboards. They're usually not tech nerds. I don't really mean anything negative by that. I just think it's interesting. Okay. We're restarting. Hopefully everything works. Nothing breaks terribly. Anything is possible. Because I swear this is a configuration I tested before, but not 100% sure. Oh, and there's my laundry. Okay, so you probably won't have this problem. I appear to have screwed up and accidentally disabled the boot logo. Uh, so that's why we're not seeing the getting ready to run Windows 95 for the first time thing right now. But that's okay. The GHCP client was unable to obtain an IP address. Huh. Okay, I must have messed something up there too. Whatever. That's fine. That's on my network, to be clear. That's not even like a Windows 95 problem. Enter our name. I'm not even going to set a password. Just let it go through here. Go ahead and set your time zone. I'm in the South Central United States, so set it to that. Go ahead and cancel Windows messaging setup. Oh, we have sound. We have sound. That's a good sign. Must restart. Ah, ta-da. Alright. Seldom been so happy to hear that, to be honest, after all we've been through here. I'm a little annoyed that I somehow broke the boot screen. Well, I did screw up on this VM several times off camera, so we'll worry about that later. Actually, wait, no, I think I know exactly what I did. On my copy of the boot disk, I disabled the boot screen for some reason. Anyway, if you're installing Windows 95 OSR 2.5, you will probably see this window pop up when it's done. But if you're planning on installing Microsoft Plus, you want to do that first. So we'll actually, let me think here. We will just go to C, WinCD-ROM, plus setup. You can safely just ignore this window for this part. Continue. It's going to ask for the product key again. Same one. Go ahead and install it. Okay. cursor spazzing out. Typical. Drive Space 3 won't be installed because we're running OSR 2.5. This doesn't really matter. Oh yeah, take your time. Oh my gosh. Is it doing anything? There we go. Okay. It's going to ask you to apply a theme. I'm not going to do that at the moment. I'm just going to hit cancel. And then it's going to prepare its help file. Now at this point, click exit. Do not restart yet. You now have a decision to make. The decision is whether or not you want to install the Windows Desktop Update. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Windows Desktop Update is, it adds Active Desktop, as well as the Internet Explorer-based version of the File Explorer. I, for one, like the Desktop Update in a way. Oh my gosh, would you shut up? No, I guess not. I like the Active Desktop stuff because it makes the user interface more familiar to me. It makes it more like Windows 98 or 2000, basically. However, on older computers, it can make things quite slow. If you do not want to install this update, you can safely open Task Manager and kill IE4 setup. I, for one, am going to go ahead and run this because I want it. But if you don't want it, I don't blame you. I think it's a pretty reasonable choice to not use it because it does make things kind of slow. But I'm just going to let it do its thing. Now, this can take quite a while. While that's happening, I'm going to go deal with my laundry, I think. Wow, it's like honestly nowhere close to being done, huh? This is slower than I realized. You know, I didn't actually hang my shirts up, so I'm gonna go do that, I guess. And come back. Oh, wow. Got back just in time this time, I guess. Optimizing your system for better performance. Oh yeah, I'm sure you are. I'm sure that I'm getting better performance from Internet Explorer 4. Like the bane of the existence of all IT professionals for like a decade. We're still preparing to run Internet Explorer 4. Maybe this is a mistake. I mean, yeah, yes, it was a mistake. It's always a mistake to install Internet Explorer 4, but I mean, okay, real talk though. I know that's the meme. Internet Explorer 4 was actually really important to the industry, and I think I could make a whole video about why. And sometimes I kind of want to. Because, like, I know everybody loves to hate on Internet Explorer, especially versions starting from 4. But, like, they were pretty important. They did a lot. I mean, AJAX stuff, like XML HTTP request object itself, that was an Internet Explorer invention. Without Internet Explorer 4 or 5 or whatever version that was, there would be no AJAX. I mean, I'm sure it would have eventually come around, but it probably would have been in a very different way. Because the other competitors in the industry just did things very differently. Okay, we're doing something. There we go. Now we're at the desktop. Okay. So, now that I've installed Internet Explorer 4, now it is time to restart the computer after installing Plus. Well, I guess I'll give it a second to kind of finish, you know, setting things up. There we go. It's a little slow, ain't it? Maybe I should have given this more RAM. Oh well. I'm sure it will be fine. Okay, good. I fixed the boot screen. So we get one. You get one Windows 95 boot up screen here. All right. Okay, so here we are with the stupid active desktop default wallpaper that I think is one of the most hideous things in the world. Let's get rid of this stupid channel bar. How do I do that? I've forgotten how to do that. Oh, web. Uncheck the channel bar. And change the default wallpaper to none. There we go. I'll come over to plus. Smooth edges of screen fonts, I want to turn that on. It's going to complain that we're at low color depth, so we're going to change it to 16-bit. Don't change it to 24-bit on the AT4000. It makes weird things happen. So 16-bit it is. There we are. I bet I can do even 800 by 600, can't I? Would you look at that? Yeah, there we go. That looks good. Yeah, she's a little slow, but yeah, it looks good. We don't have full color depth on the icons yet. We can do a quick reboot to achieve that, I bet. So, to do a quick reboot on Windows 9X, I'm sure a lot of you probably know this, but you go shut down, you choose restart, and you hold down shift as you click OK. And it will say Windows is restarting. It's not usually that worth doing, but when you just change a Windows setting, it can be useful because it just shaves a few seconds off the reboot process. I'm not going to lie to you, this is pretty slow. I should have given this 32 megs of RAM. RAM upgrades can do quite a bit for just the performance of normal computing on Windows 95. Anyway, here we are at our fully installed Windows desktop, and you can see the Windows desktop update in action when I open an Explorer window. You can see it looks mostly like Windows 98. It's got this weird giant circle thing over here and stuff, but for the most part it behaves like Windows 98. It is noticeably very slow. I probably don't have to tell you that. It is not a great experience. So that's why I made sure to tell you, that you don't have to install it because it can be a little annoying. Let me make it so I see file extensions and hidden files and stuff. It does, however, make hidden files look faded out like it does in later versions of Windows, which can be nice, honestly. I mean, I think everything is working in this VM. Let's check our multimedia stuff here. Yeah, we've got Sound Blaster 16. We've got FM Synth. Let's check our Windows Media folder. There we go. We've got some stanky FM Synth. But hey, everything's working. Oh, my right ear's having a great time. I actually feel like that sounds worse than normal. Okay, we've all heard passport.mid, but point is, things are working. You can play some games in here. You can do whatever. You can play Minesweeper. I actually hate the Win9X version of Minesweeper. The patterns are so predictable, and yet sometimes very hard to complete for somebody like me who's only like halfway decent at this. Like I understand the rules. I am not fast at playing Minesweeper. I am like firmly okay at it. And then when I see a lot of numbers that aren't easy to decipher, I get all nervous. I don't know, that one. No, see, that's the problem. Well, anyway. There are other things you can install off the Windows CD, like if you want QBasic from MS-DOS or a few other things like that. They're in there. You can copy them from Windows CD. Those sorts of things don't get copied in the Win95 folder. They're in another folder called like extras, old MS-DOS or something like that. I forget. As it stands right now, though, you have a good functional Windows 95 VM, and mine has actually a lot of disk space. It's not fast, but like you could run like the Incredible Machine in here. Probably missed the Museum of Anything Goes, if you know what the heck that is. Things that are 2D are going to run just fine in here. Voodoo support is a possibility. I've never really tried to get it to work, but it's possible. I think the hardware set that I chose here, yeah, there's not any missing drivers. They're all built into Windows, which is really nice. Yeah, you've got a functional VM here. And this works so much better than anything I've done a tutorial on before. This is slow because I picked a slow computer to emulate, but all around, this is stable. It works great. I mean, I think we still don't have a network connection for some reason. Yeah, that's... Oh, wait, no, that's not. Which, I don't know why. I don't know why we don't have a connection. Let me... Huh. I don't know. What I told you should work. I think I've just screwed something up on my local network settings, and I've got to mess with it to get it working again. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't matter that much. But, yeah, you know. Anyway, let's go ahead and shut this thing down. Get that lovely orange letters, at which point you can just close the virtual machine. And that's really all there is to it. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope I made sense, didn't ramble on forever, and actually somewhat looked like I knew what I was doing here. I know I ran into a lot of problems, but hopefully I'm able to cut most of those out without affecting the content of the video too much. The links for my modified boot disks will be in the description. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, leave a comment for me. Otherwise, you know, you can share this video with your retro computing inclined friends if they've never used 86box or whatever. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.